So thank you all for coming to Jonah and Brucker Cohen's lecture and workshop. I'm Adriana de Souza Silva, as most of you know me, and I'm the director of the Center for Transformative Media. Just want to say a few words about this center. The CTM is a campus interdisciplinary research hub to investigating the transformative potential of emerging media technologies in shaping grassroots creativity and promoting social change. We explore how technologies, the many ways that creativity interact with media technologies. First, how emerging media technologies transform society, but also a creative potential to develop new technologies, and how creative uses of technologies improve people's lives. And especially, we are very interested in the study of AI as media, looking at AI as a cultural and communicative force that shapes society, connectivity, creativity, knowledge production, and civic life. And also how it transforms urban spaces, storytelling, journalism, community engagement, and society. You probably know it. I just wanted to make sure that there are many ways to be involved with this center. You can check our website. There's the QR code there. Sign up for our newsletter that comes every beginning of the month. Apply for center membership if you're faculty here. Attend our bi-weekly brown bag lunches at the library. And organize our event with us and attend our events. And so thank you for coming here today. And I just wanted to mention we have 2 events coming up in April. These are the last 2 events of the semester. First, we have a book talk from Silke Meyer on April 6th, and then our last episode of the AI webinar series, which is AI Influencers and the Future of Creativity, coming up on April 15th. And with that, I just want to get my colleague Celia Pierce, who has helped, is the kind of organizer behind this event, and to introduce Jonah and say a few words as well.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to just start by acknowledging that this is a group-powered event. As everyone knows, we've had budget cuts this year, somewhat inexplicably. There are actually 5 different organizations that I reached out to and said, we need to bring this guy, this is how much it's going to cost, and they all threw a little bit of money in. So I must acknowledge them all. The first one is the Department of Art and Design, which is the department that I'm in. The second is the Center for Transformative Media. The third is Games at Northeastern, which is kind of a network of all of the people across campus who are doing games. Excite, which is a brand new lecture series that includes AR and games, and then the Center for Design, which is the space we're in right now. So I want to thank all of those entities for chipping in to make this happen. There's always workarounds, folks. We just got to work together. So I am super happy. Dietmar sent me this email like, Jonah, Brucker, Cohen, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I've known this guy forever, and he's awesome, and you have to bring him here no matter what it takes. So Jonah is an incredible artist and scholar who really focuses on critical technologies. But what's great about him is that he makes stuff, and the stuff he makes is itself critical. So he makes work, and I was just reading about this today, maybe it was in your quals, about the idea of artifacts that are critical artifacts, not just the writing about the artifacts. And so this is the juncture at which Noah really excels as one of the leading people, I think, in the country, definitely, if not the world. He's had work he got his PhD at Trinity College Dublin, and his work's been at SF MoMA, Whitney, Palais de Tokyo, Tate Modern, and more. So he's been in the public eye with this amazing work, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his methodology and his ideas in creating critical work.
Thanks.
Yay!
Thanks, Celia. Thanks, Adriana, for invite too. And good to see so many familiar people I've known from years ago. I have some connections to Boston. In a little bit, I was a part of MIT's European Research Lab, the MIT Media Lab Europe. from 2001 to 2005. So we had a lab in Dublin in an old Guinness factory. Basically, Sam was there. Sam's here. And we basically got to work on cool projects. So some of the projects I'll talk about today are things related to that when I was there. But after that, I've been working kind of mainly in the field of networks. My PhD was about like looking at networks and challenging them, and I'll talk about that. But then also, I've just been able to kind of like look around how we use technology, the digital experience, what we're actually seeing with it, and how we can actually subvert it, challenge it, break it. I'm kind of interested in seeing like how we can move around and challenge that stuff. So the talk is called Critical Digital Experience. It used to be called Digital Networks, but I've kind of gone beyond networks to other things. So start off, I want to talk about context. I like giving this in my talk at the beginning. So this is how networks are changing public spaces. This is in China. If you have your cell phone, you're allowed to walk on this lane. If you don't have your cell phone, you can walk on that lane. So you get to see some more nature, I guess, if you're not using your phone, which is kind of cool. And so we're going to see how basically like these networks are kind of disrupting our public spaces. And then back in the early 2000s, people were using these Wi-Fi networks to actually send messages. So like this was somebody who was upset that people were stealing his Wi-Fi. So he made a network name called Get Your Own Damn Wi-Fi, and somebody did that afterwards. I thought that was pretty funny. But you know, like having conversations with SSID is just something like that the people who invented SSID did not think of as a way of conversation method. It could be a chat medium. If you don't like your neighbors, you can make your network that name. They might get the point. And then looking at public spaces and cell phones, this is in the Netherlands. It's called light lines. It's an LED strip that's in the streets for people that are looking at their phones when they're crossing the street, so they don't actually get hit by a car because they'll know that it's a stoplight. And I noticed this also was in Seoul, Korea last summer. There are bigger ones there all over the streets for people that are just too busy looking at their phones as a distraction. So this is a way that like these networks are finally like infiltrating our public spaces. So I want to talk a little bit about context. So my work looks at context of how we use technology, how we kind of play around with it, and how we use it. This is a quote from David Weinberger, who wrote a book called Too Big to Know back in 2012. He says, knowledge in the internet age is network knowledge is becoming more like what knowledge has been in the past few hundred years for scientists. It's provisional, it's a hypothesis waiting to be disproved. That's kind of how I look at technology. I'm like, how can we actually twist it around, break it, make it do things it shouldn't do, and what will that teach us about it? Here's a picture of something I like. So this is at a restaurant. If you, when you go to eat, you put your phone, everyone who's sitting with you, put your phone on the trap, and then the first one who picks up their phone has to pay for everyone else's meal. So it kind of shows you that if you don't use your technology, you might actually save some money in the end. But that's kind of funny that was actually at a commercial restaurant, right? Like a big restaurant chain. And that they're seeing more people trying to avoid that. This is also funny. I found Zoom on an office building when I thought their entire business plan was to not have offices. So I was like, Zoom office building is the opposite of what to do. It's just another kind of exciting kind of thing, realization. This is another one. So if maybe ChatGPT will get good at building things, maybe you could actually have it build a building. This was an ad for I think a storage unit or like working space, communal working space. But we might see AI get to the point of that. I'll talk to someone about AI as we go. So my talk's like split up into different categories. The first one's about dynamic data, networks, mobile experience, physical interfaces. So looking at how you could infuse static identifiers with real-time data and apps. And then I'll look at location and political subversion, a couple projects that look at kind of how when we embed things like social and personal data into location services, how that changes our relationship with the technology we use and the locations. I did a whole series on AI, so I'll talk a bit about some of the AI projects. Giving this talk again on just the AI stuff tomorrow at a conference in Connecticut about kind of technology and art. And then the last one is about kind of human frailty, environmental dysfunction, and how all of that can come into play when we're thinking about interface design. So I'll look at kind of everything we do wrong with technology, how to put that in its place. Here's another kind of crazy invention. So this is the telegraph, right? 1832, looks like it doesn't do much, but actually this was like the grounding of the internet. A quote from Neil Postman, who started a program at NYU that I taught in the early 2000s. He wrote, "The telegraph removes space as an inevitable constraint on the movement of information, and for the first time, transportation and communication were disengaged from each other, right? So it's that feeling you get when you click on a link and you're immediately transported to that location, right? There's no in-between. There's no journey, but like for us as physical beings, we had to get from like our home to this location or from another location, and we have that whole journey in our head. So my interest is how do we reintroduce that journey, right, back into online communications that are so like vapid and like so immediate. They don't have any kind of like emotional connection anymore. They're kind of just one-to-one. So I'll look at kind of critical network interfaces. So starting off with some early projects of mine. The first one looks at Crank the Web. So this is a project of mine where I actually built a hand crank where you type in a website and you have to download by hand the website, right? So you have to like pull in the bits by yourself. This materializes bandwidth, which is something very immaterial. We sort of just pay for it. We don't really think about it as a physical thing. It takes physical interaction and puts it back into an automated world, right? We're living in an AI automation world where like our calendars are taken care of for us and all these things, but how do we actually add the physicality back? And it takes like a 3,000-year-old technology like the crank, and it connects it to today's technology. So I actually showed this project again. There was an exhibition at the ZKM Museum in Western Germany last year, and this was part of this like 30th anniversary of net art, physical art. So I made a new video with the sound. Sound's not coming through there. Or maybe I have to export the sound to the HDMI. Let me pause it for a second, just get the sound out. Is this coming out the speaker? Yeah, there we go, Sony. Okay. Sorry. It's better if it's through the speaker or the TV. Okay. Should work now. Maybe. No, it doesn't like my videos. No, okay, never mind. It doesn't like my videos, so I'll just play it through the regular thing. Okay, so yeah, I think we're in a small enough room you can probably hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So here's a quick video. So this just sort of explains a bit about how the project is. So I started this project long time ago in the early 2000s, but I was really looking at like how we can make the web more physical, how we can add like something physicality to digital things. So it's an ancient form of technology, like a 3,000-year-old or 2,000-year-old technology of the crank and what that could mean to technology. And it tries to think about bandwidth as something that should be free and that we should just use ourselves with it. So you type in a URL and you press enter and nothing happens. Right? So then you actually have to start cranking the web. And it's very loud. You wouldn't want to do this every day, and then slowly the web page starts loading. This is Google News. So this is some footage from one of the first exhibitions I showed in Austria in 2001. So looking kind of at physical structures. Another physical project I made back then was called Alerting Infrastructure. So it's this large like jackhammer that's connected to the side of a building or inside a building wall. And every time the website of the building gets a hit, this thing starts destroying the physical building's wall. So it starts, think of it as like a physical hit. And it really looks at how websites relate to their physical space, the physical space that they represent. Could actually there be a connection there? Like we don't actually know the people that are visiting the Northeastern website right now, right? And we're sitting here, like how could there be a better connection between direct visitors and the people that are actually occupying that space? So it looks at how simultaneous visitors could interact in real spaces, real time, and then it adds consequences to visiting online spaces. So this is a video, this is an old, another over 20-year-old project, but still people want me to show this, so I showed it last year in Belgium, and I'll show a clip from that. I think people just like destruction in general, showing destruction. So, yeah, so that's kind of what it sounds like. And then on the website, you get a readout. Let's see. On the website, you get a readout that tells you basically like how much damage you just caused the building. Thanks for coming. So, so yeah, you keep hitting refresh, and they won't like you anymore. Yeah. I think I've shown this overall in about 10 different countries over the last 20 years. Yeah, this is my next version. I haven't made it yet. You know a building. And then this is my extreme version, which maybe would happen if somebody is willing to give up a whole building. I don't know. Not really. And then here's some footage from the show that happened last year in Brussels. So she's working up to it, and it kind of scares. They thought there was a ghost. Yeah. Yeah, so that was a kind of funny little Instagram short somebody made of the project. It's kind of fun to show this because you never know like what's gonna happen. Yeah. Okay, so then kind of moving in that same area, back in the early 2000s, there was like lots of issues about Wi-Fi and wireless control and how like signals are like jamming other signals and not and like one might be stronger because you have more money for it. So this is like a picture of a public park, and there's all these signals like bombarding the park. And there was in the early 2000s in Portland, Oregon, there was a community group putting up their community public Wi-Fi that anyone could join. And Starbucks opened a store nearby, and their Wi-Fi was so strong it like overpowered the community group so much that they had to shut it down. So I was looking at this back in the day, and I was like, how could you actually make something to subvert this? So I made this project back then called Wi-Fi Hog, and it's like this attachment that you stick on a laptop, and it consists of a jammer and a circuit that can pick up Wi-Fi signals and also a packet sniffer, so it can actually look at the packets, and if it notices data coming through that wasn't from from your machine, it would then jam the network so only you could use it, to show that a third party could control the space rather than the corporations controlling it. So it's kind of like a protest piece, I guess, in a way. And it's looking at kind of Habermas's theory about public sphere as a social leveler, like using Wi-Fi as a way of like leveling these spaces. It's a little less relevant now because we have data on our phones. We don't need Wi-Fi as often, but in those situations it was pretty crazy. And it kind of goes back to the 1862. There was an act that the U.S. had to put in our Homestead Act for people moving west in order for people to keep the land so other people wouldn't settle on it. So it's about like how do you actually protect these spaces, and it kind of looked like this. So you'd have like a normal open node use, and then with the Wi-Fi hogger off, you'd still get their packets through, but then with it on, everyone is blocked but the person using it. So it just kind of was like a tactical device to control these systems. Now moving on from there, I'm really interested in like critical interfaces. I don't know who made this, but I love this. This is a keyboard according to Microsoft. The Control-Alt-Delete keys are all you need to basically use the entire computer because no one else used that key combination. So I was asked by the Whitney in the early 2000s to design or to do something for their ArtPort, which is their like live web art portal to the web, and I came up with a project related to that. But here's a quote about interfaces by Donald Norman. He says, "Once an infrastructure gets established, it's difficult to change, for they're deeply embedded into the culture of society, so ingrained that people have learned to live, work, play, and that that change can take place slowly, sometimes decades." We saw that with the desktop interface. With mobile devices, we're starting to get more into icon-based stuff, less desktop, although the desktop still somehow managed to stay there all the time. So I was interested in like what happens when you add a rule system change to something like a social software, something that we use a lot. And I made this project back then in the early 2000s for the Whitney's website called Bump List. It's an email community for the determined. So when you join Bump List, you bump somebody off. It only supports 6 users, and then you join them and you bump them. So to be part of it, they have to keep subscribing, right? So it looks at like these accepted forms of discourse. It places rules on them and examines how when you put a constraint on a system or a society or in general, how that influences the community. There are people that were really like gung-ho about keeping their stats high on this list, so they would like tell people not to join, they would like bump people off. This keeps track of how long you've been on. So it doesn't show you an archive, it just shows you how long the person has been on the list. But this person was on for 296 days. That means they might have had like 2,000 total subscriptions, because it was covered in the news and people were being bumped every minute almost. It was so fast. Yeah. Also on social media, This is a collaboration I did with Catherine Moriwaki, who's a professor at Parsons School of Design. It's called America's Got No Talent. So Bump List and this project are both now in the permanent collection of the Whitney in New York. And this project is going to be on display there in October if you guys come to New York, because they're doing a 25th anniversary show for the Whitney's art board. So this project is called America's Got No Talent. It's a Twitter visualization of reality TV shows like America's Got Talent, American Idol, X Factor, Next Top Model. And it basically visualizes them in the form of an American flag where like the tweets fill up the stripes about the shows. And then the stars, we sort of did something called a tweet back loop where we took data from tweets that had the word America and the word no talent, and we combined them into tweets and then sent them out the project's account. So, so this is looking at kind of how the popularity of a reality TV shows based on their social media popularity, right, and how that actually could feed back into itself. Here's a picture of, this was installed at the Whitney. It looked like this back in 2019 for a larger show about kind of data networks. And it'll be something similar to this probably when it's shown again in the fall. Okay, cool. All right, so now I'm going to get into kind of critical and social displays a bit and look a bit about political displays. So also in the early 2000s, I was working with physical objects and data, and I wanted to see how you could actually create a visualization that used things like kind of suspicious keywords. So after 9/11, the U.S. government put into place a surveillance piece of software called Carnivore that was like supposed to track ISPs and see if their next terrorists would show up. But there was an artist group in New York called Radical Software Group that made an open source version of this software and just gave it to artists and said, do something interesting with the data. So I made something called Police State. It looks like this. It was using 20 remote control little mini police cars, and each one would drive around in patterns associated with words that it would snoop on a local network. So if it found terrorist keywords like attack with a deadly weapon, like a bomb threat, any kind of guns or anything like that, it would start moving these cars around in patterns. So it's looking at kind of how you can take data from the screen, manipulate it into physical things, how you could represent that into kinetic spaces. We don't really see a lot of data visualization as physical objects as much as we do on the screen. So I wanted to kind of do that. This was the first physical incarnation of Carnivore, this software. This is actually now built into processing, right, the free open source software. It's a library for processing, so it's still able to be used. This is a video way back from then. This was an install that I did in the early 2000s at a Deaf Festival in Rotterdam. Yeah, the sound will work. We'll hear that a little bit. So the cars are kind of all listening to the same frequency, so they move together as a swarm, kind of like what normal police cars would do, but little inconsistencies in the platform they're driving on, dust, the amount of air in the room would change their course. So this is them all kind of moving together. See, sometimes they're synced like this, which is pretty good, but sometimes they're all over the place. Which is kind of like what regular police are like. Yeah. Yeah, it's a donut break. So it looked for keywords. So anytime you're like web browsing, a word like this would pop up, and then it would map it to an active code, and then the code would be mapped to a binary code, which is sent to the cars as a communication system. And I built like a physical, rather like a graphical interface to show like what the keywords look like, what the data coming in look like, and how the cars are all mapped. Sometimes it would be like garbled text, but a lot of the time you get really interesting keyword matches. So you can see like bomb threat, possible dead body, alarm 7. And they just look really interesting as a swarm moving around on this about like 15-meter square platform. You can see that dog. Okay. Some footage from the opening. So I'll move on from that one into looking also kind of also at this like political display. So this is another project that I did.
I just want to let you know it's one. So
Oh,
you have
how much time do I have?
half the hour.
Okay, I'll go fast, yeah. So this is one called Kill a Root. It looks at kind of location services and what happens when you add things like social data. So this this app tracks all of the crime happening in a city, and then it forces you to drive through the areas with the most crime in order to get to your destination. Kind of the opposite of what a normal GPS would do. And it converges like live crime data with GPS mapping and creates this active data loop. So just as like a side thing, there's a hackathon that happens every year at NYU called the Stupid Hackathon, and this was made as a project for that. And I had to use cops. Kind of on the same, kind of in the same area. I'm interested in like looking also at how machine learning could tie into this stuff as real-time data. And so during the pandemic, there were all these protests happening, and I worked on this project with another artist in New York named Mark Ramos. It's called To Protect the Server, and we wanted to look at Google data. So we actually built a ReCaptcha service, but instead of clicking on crosswalks, you click on images you thought of were police brutality to kind of make you think of what a police officer might see. And it's called To Protect the Server, and it connects sort of actual images, also with anime images, video game depictions of police, and then when you pass the test, it takes you to a training game called Police VR Enforcer, which is actually a training game that police use to learn how to become a cop. And so this is what once you get the thing correct, it does that. Here's a quick video of this project too. That's what the game looks like. Some of the images are like kind of cartoony, but some of them are animated. I was surprised that this game actually exists, which is kind of crazy. It's called Police Enforcement VR1 King 27. More like a simulator than a game, but it's a game system.
Like that violent video games are the reason we have mass gun violence in this country. And with the most recent wave of mass shootings, I hate even saying that phrase. It sounds so crazy that we've just gotten used to it. But with the recent one, our House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy spoke about how video games are dehumanizing individuals. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick just said in response to the shootings, we've always had guns, always had evil, but I see a video game industry that teaches young people to kill. And then, just today, President Trump said we must stop the glorification of violence.
165 million Americans enjoy video games,
So
and
this
billions
is
of people
a sad
play
stat,
video
but
games
it's pretty true
worldwide. Yet
in
other
this country.
societies where video games are played as avidly do not contend with the tragic levels of violence that occur in the U.S.
Yeah, so that's that project. So I'm also looking at gamification in other ways, and this one is related to corporate takeovers. So I made a claw machine called Surprise Acquisition that looks at predatory practice of corporate buyouts. So look at all these companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta, kind of buying smaller companies, integrating them into their products, and then kind of cashing in on them. And this project looks like kind of the randomness of an arcade claw machine connected to that, and also gamifying this idea of economic rivals. Here's a quick video. This was a couple of years ago, 2012. So it's small, but it's
share photos on Instagram. A company with only 13 employees bought today by Facebook for $1 billion.
Amazon has bought Twitch, a video game streaming service, in a deal worth nearly $1 billion.
Update, Facebook owner Mark Zuckerberg just announced that they are going to be purchasing Oculus, the company behind the VR headset, the Oculus Rift, for $2 billion.
Apple bought Beats Electronics for $3.2 billion.
Yeah, why? So you play in this little claw machine, and you put in money, and then you play as Amazon, Apple, Meta, or Microsoft, and you have to pick up companies, like smaller companies like Activision, Roomba, I think. And I showed this at a couple of different events, at Nest, Oculus, Android. And as you get them, it kind of drops the company into these bins, and then it tallies the amount of money spent on the top, so you get to see how much money these companies actually spent. 970 million, 669 billion, kind of crazy. And so it kind of, think of it as like a corporate game of technological corporate. Okay, cool. All right, so I'll move on to the last couple things. So looking at public spaces, I'm interested in like what happens in these spaces and why cities don't integrate data that's collected in these spaces better into the actual spaces themselves. So I built this project called Crossing Algorithm that's a crosswalk button, but instead of being a regular crosswalk button, this thing actually integrates things like all the accidents that happen at that corner, or like what that corner stood for, like over the past like 100 years, like who lived there. And so it looks at kind of, imagine a city you could place its data into citizen engagement, like would people cross that crosswalk if they knew there were like 100 accidents that happened there last year? Would it change them? And also it delays the time that it takes for them to wait to cross the street based on how many accidents as well. So it forces them to kind of think there's something that could happen there. So it looks like kind of encoding the city's history, pedestrian industry, injury into the street, and then the wait times based on frequency. But it brings up this question, which is also bigger, is like if a city knows where harm occurs, why does that knowledge rarely translate into accountability? We don't really see that happen in many places. I have a video, I'm going to speed through it to get to the next project. Also looking at public data, I'm doing a lot of projects related to public data. One thing I'm really fascinated with is waiting times, and so this is like a typical wait room. And so I made this this chair called Average Citizen that basically is a chair that has wait times of public services, and you sit on it and it resets to the amount of time for a random public service, like you're sitting and waiting for the DMV or you're waiting for like the citizen desk, or like the housing court case. So it looks at kind of public service wait times, how you could change that and turn that into a lived experience, and exposes how these statistical averages erase lived inequality, making bureaucracy available. So here's a quick video of this project. All kind of about public space and
Average
public
Citizen
data.
is an interactive chair and data sculpture that assigns waiting times for NYC public services.
This is New York
When a person
public
sits,
service.
the chair silently selects a wait duration drawn from real, publicly available municipal data and begins counting down. The visitor is not told which office they are waiting for, only that they are now an average citizen. The chair does not respond to urgency, context, or individual circumstance. Standing up resets the system for the next person. The chair borrows wait times from city agencies such as the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Social Security Administration, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Internal Revenue Service, public housing offices, unemployment insurance offices, family court clerks, municipal permitting departments, and more. By collapsing disparate
want to be in the
processes
27
into a
months.
single, randomized waiting experience, Average Citizen exposes how averages erase lived differences. The work treats waiting not as an inconvenience, but as an administrative condition, distributed unevenly, normalized statistically, and rendered invisible through aggregation.
Yeah. So it's about kind of bringing public data a bit more into the forefront. Yeah, okay. All right. And then I'll skip ahead. So a bunch of other stuff. I'll skip to environmental stuff because I think everyone's out of time soon. The AI stuff first. Okay, so I'm here actually on a trip going to Connecticut to give a talk related to this stuff, but I'll kind of go over a few of the projects that I made related to AI, because AI seems to be in everyone's brain right now. So this is a clock that I made called Clockwise. It's a clock that will only give you the time it was the last time you looked at it. It uses facial recognition to detect your face, and if it sees it's you, it'll like go back to whatever it was the last. So think of it as like a machine that forgets, or like a computer that forgets, or a clock that forgets. It's inspired by this research by Herman Ebbinghaus in the 1800s that found that like we always forget things within about an hour of learning some new information unless we kind of prop up that data. So quick video. Yeah, so there's a lot of statistical data about this. It is subjective, but it all kind of goes into a curve, I guess, of data. And it kind of made it look like an old style flip clock. So that's a kind of example, but we basically kind of, our memory is now becoming eaten up by the cloud. I always ask my students, like, if I took away your address books or your phones, how much of those numbers would you remember? And nobody would remember anything. So it's playing a bit about that. Also looking at AI and desktop manipulation. So I made a mouse hack called AgroMouse that only allows you to click on certain things on your desktop if you haven't clicked on them enough times, or too many times. So like if you open up the same folder too many times, it suddenly stops you from accessing it. And it kind of forces you to think about like what happens when data can react back to us. There's a quick video of this. Very like sketchy looking hand there. But think about like what happens when your data starts not liking you, or what happens when it starts reacting back to you. How could that like make you not want to use it anymore, or make your computer less friendly, I guess. So I just clicked on that folder too many times. It's not letting me access it anymore. And it kind of like the mouse would have like gears and motors in it to actually move you away from whatever you're trying to click on the opposite way, in order to kind of show that eventually AI could get the better of us in that way. Okay, cool. And then looking also, we use AI, a lot of people use AI as like to create images, like beautiful images, unique images. I wanted to use it in a different way to kind of think about how we could like recreate things that were forgotten or abandoned. So I built this project called Homemade that like takes open data of abandoned or dilapidated or foreclosed housing, and this is in New York City. And it uses AI to like recreate this crumbling data site. So this is an example of before and after. So you have like the dead building, and then what AI did to the building after. So I basically used it to create an entire like real estate site where it would show like prices of these abandoned structures after AI has like recreated them into beautiful apartments or like nice houses, in order to kind of see how that would actually change it. And then Subtask is another AI-related project. It's a Chrome plugin that shows you all of the things that AI is doing on a website that you don't see. So like tightening up images, or like editing text in the background, or basically trying to like make things being clicked on more than they should be. And it amplifies our ability of laziness to complete tasks. You can download it for free at Subtask. CoinOpera.com, and I have a bunch of stickers, but it kind of looks like this. So this is Google News, and so Subtask pops up all these like black boxes that says how much an Amazon Turk worker worked to to do something here on the page, or how much an app and AI used to log in, log something on the website. So you get to see kind of like all the invisible labor that was there. So the Amazon Turk was using Mechanical Turk. I had to label 1,000 images before I saw $1, or every minute was logged in unpaid training. So it's just about kind of like making the invisible visible, which is a lot of what my work does anyway. Special memory is as well. It's a calendar that uses face detection to like bring up dates from your past that look at like how you're feeling right now. So if you smile at it, it could be like the day you got into college, or like the day you got married or something. Or if you frown at it, it'll be like the day you got arrested or something. So not very good, but but kind of trying to like think about it, like things like calendars or static objects could actually have that memory built in based on facial expression, how it could actually relate back to you. Okay, kind of move on to that, and then get back to a couple of things. I want to show the demo at the end of things. Yeah, I'll just show the human error stuff. So I did this project actually I showed here at Northeastern a couple of years ago too. It's called Human Error. It's all the things we do wrong with technology. So these are like different examples of that in the series. So I made a power strip that you can't plug anything into. There's too many plugs. I made a password field where you type in your password and it always resets it back to the word password every time. Software for your Mac that dims your screen to 5% every 15 minutes. So it like forces you to make your screen brighter. This one that like respells all your words into like leet speak, Twitter speak, and then a phone app that instead of the numbers you have to dial with the letters only. It forces you, and then a switch here that it's only a few of the series, but this is a switch that can only turn things off, never on. So it's about like what happens when you like all the things that we do wrong with technology embedded back into the technology. And accidental emails. So I made this plugin for Apple Mail that will automatically stick a email address to whatever email you're sending, and send it to a random person in your contact list. So it's called email roulette, I guess, as an error. So when you kind of things we do anyway, but like this reinforces it and makes it even like worse because it's unintended audiences. So someone writing an email on their phone, and then also someone writing an email in the regular email app. It'll start like putting it through a roulette system and then adding that thing to you. Yeah. So there are a lot of issues with errors related to email security, but this is a kind of example. So people don't really realize that they're doing is wrong. And here's let's see if there's a picture. Yeah, so here's an example. It's sort of roulette's a random email address in your address book and then sends it out. Do not share. Analyzing your email and making sure that it's something you definitely don't want to share. Important for your eyes only. On purpose to kind of screw with the whole point of sending things. So unintended targets and confusing outputs. Yeah, and then this one is a paper jam project. So it's a printer that's modified to automatically cause a paper jam every 5 prints. That's another human error that we do. So it keeps track of the queue of how many things are being printed, and then like will get your paper stuck in it. The point. So things that we like. Yeah, that's not good. But we waste so much paper in this country and also in other countries that I think I have a stat in here. You could build a paper wall from like the East Coast to the West Coast with all the amount of paper that we completely waste. Yeah. So it's kind of funny when that happens. Yeah, 10,000 sheets in an office annually. So it's kind of like just building that into something more physical in this sense. All right, I'll move through this. And then another one, a camera that will only take bad pictures, for instance. Same thing in human error. So if it has a face in it, it won't work. All right, so then we're gonna do a workshop after this talk, and I wanted to show like a quick promo of that so people stick around for it, and then I'll get to the last.
About 8 minutes.
Okay, yeah, this is only 2 minutes. So this is a workshop that I do. We're going to do it here in the class. I'm in the building after this. It's called Scrap Your Challenge. I started with Catherine Moriwaki back in 2003. We take junk objects. We ask people who don't necessarily have to have any electronics experience. You're basically just building an interface, and you connect it to a board. And the original ones we were building MIDI controllers, so things that make sound, instruments. And then I recently modified it to game design, and now you can make game controllers. So that's what we'll be doing in the workshop. And we've held it in 17 countries, 5 continents, hundreds of times, all over the world. Here's a quick video. This is a video of the game one. So this is the one that I think I held at NYU back in 2024. So the point is to get really creative and like just let your imagination go crazy and think about like how you can make a controller. So there's some examples. This is just the beginning part. So this is controlling the game The Simpsons with a kid's toy with like a steering wheel, flywheel, and pump. So basically they just created this like kind of controller out of junk objects. Yeah. That's from the picture. But there's a really great one after this of Street Fighter. The Mario Kart with a bowling ball. So they just took a bowling ball and covered it in foil and then used it as a controller because it's conductive as they move it around this like surface. And then it controls the car in Mario Kart. And then we had a game of Operation, which is the classic medical game. I'll show you that. And so this is Operation, right? And he's using it to control Street Fighter, which is pretty amazing. I call it Operation Street Fighter. So you can have like multiple people controlling it from the game platform, which is really fun. And then Mario, of course, again. Mario's always popular in this workshop. Okay. So you get the idea. So it's basically like a really fun workshop where you get to build things. And yeah, okay. And then we'll kind of wrap up from there. So if you look at all the projects I've been showing, it's about kind of how these are some themes that kind of come out of them, looking at networks and how they're everywhere, but when you sort of deconstruct how we interface with them and how we use them, you sort of provoke new relationships. When you take a context that people understand and you kind of like replace it, reimagine it, shift it around, that shows people that there's other opportunities there to kind of play around with it and create something new. You take a standard like an AI interface design, any kind of hardware, subvert it to a new type of standard or a new types of interface similar. You can change things, mistrust the cloud. Don't think about how you could actually, you don't let your personal abilities like your memory disappear to the cloud. Try to get that back through making projects that do that. And then looking at kind of connected objects, how could we like corrupt the sort of social interfaces of the Internet of Things and make them kind of more connected to the world we're living in directly, like thinking about all the social cues that you get from a connected object, how people use it, where it's located, and things like that. And then I have a demo that I want to do with you guys, and you can do it with your phone. Should we do questions first, or the demo after, or during? Maybe during. I don't know. What do you guys think? So you can get out your phones, and you can try this. And I'm reachable, by the way, on more projects on that website. But you can do the demo.
Maybe
and
like a couple questions.
Yeah, I'll get the demo running, and we can do the questions. Yeah, Laura. yeah, sure.
So one is.
Here's the demo. It's not photos. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the questions is, and obviously I've known you for a long time, and I really enjoy your work. One is, what is your creative process?
Okay.
And the second is, for some of the projects that, especially those ones around like the police brutality and things like those themes, like how do you feel like those land in the current moment? Or like some works you can show again and again, and they have a very similar, you as an audience member, you have a very similar take on them, and others might provoke a different sensation today than they did originally. So those are my 2 questions. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, some of them might be dated actually at this point, but it's
or just
not
like
dated, but just like
the feeling different. Of that the person gets while seeing them is very different today than it was like 10 years ago. Let's say.
Yeah. It's funny though, because like some of those projects, people still want to show it. Yeah, you can, if you zoom into this QR code, it'll bring up the chat message or the SMS right away. So I think, I think when I approach it, I'm definitely of the era that I'm looking at. Some of the projects, 20 years ago, they're definitely going to have different meaning. But if you can think of a theme that underlies your work that is sort of universal, it can't go away. There's ways to adapt it over time to make it more relevant, I think. And so it's tricky. You don't want to do something like too of the moment, because it might. This is image mode. Let me change it to text mode.
But I feel like what's really amazing to me is how many of your old works still hold up. That's even more impressive, because if you're doing activist work, by definition, it kind of has to be topical.
Yeah.
But you picked some topics that are, if anything, getting worse. Right?
Totally. Yeah. Totally. I mean, that's key, and I think some of them, they still definitely have resonance. Especially Crank the Web. I mean, people were going crazy. I just showed that in Germany last year. It was used so much that the crank actually broke, so they had to replace the crank. People were cranking it so hard. They split it in half.
And all the police brutality stuff.
The police brutality stuff too.
Even more relevant now. Huh.
Yeah.
Right, it's more relevant, but it's also like more triggering.
It's not working.
You know what I mean? So it's like I almost can't watch it.
Try refreshing this.
10 years ago, I would have been like, oh, this is a really important social commentary, and this is something everyone needs to know about. And now it's like so real that it's just like painful.
Oh, it doesn't seem to be working. Oh, there it is. Exactly. And I mean, somebody walked out actually once when I showed a version of this because they were offended by an image that showed up. So it depends. I mean, you have to be really careful too in public pieces that you don't have anything that's too open, right? Because then people will abuse it, right? So you have to think about like ways to stop that from happening.
Oh, so there was like Zoom bombing, but it happened
Zoom bombing, but like through a exactly. I'm not sure why this isn't working. It should work, but maybe not that bottom number. I think it's the top number. Let's try to get rid of it.
But do you have any extended thoughts on your creative process that you can share with us?
Oh yeah,
I mean your work has such a great combination of humor and irony and then materiality and all of these great components. But what is how would you describe your creative process?
I just try to look around and see what people are doing with technology that they're using daily, how they're living in the world they're living in, and trying to kind of mess with it a bit, or just poke at it enough that it changes your perspective on how you view it. So I mean, some of these things, if you look at the hardware behind some of the physical projects, they're really simple. The technology is like a switch, right, or something, but it's just how much meaning can you build around something as simple as a switch? I think that's kind of a key way to look at it, is how do you build it, how do you make it just simple enough to understand it, but also simple enough that they'll flip a switch in somebody's head to change their thinking or perspective about something. Oh good, somebody wrote it. So but I think I mean a lot of the human error stuff, I was just noticing how people are technology is messing up as they're using it, but why not just add that to the technology itself and sort of start from there? When people's computers don't work, they take the monitor and throw it out the window, but that's not the computer, so it's the other way around. Right. We should make a trampoline for monitors. Pops back.
New project is born.
Yeah, exactly. And then the average citizen one is really all this data is just sitting there, but it's not really used in a meaningful way a lot of the time. So how can we actually bring it out into public space? The same with the crosswalk one, trying to connect that stuff to real life is hard. People don't typically do that. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a little bit what the workshop does too. Like,
I mean, I think I think one of the things I love about your work is how mundane all of the things you encounter. They're like really like the crosswalk thing is amazing. Like we just don't. It's tech we pay no attention to.
Yeah.
There's a kind of there's something.
Exactly.
Constructionist theory. One of the things about it is like it addresses things we take for granted, and I think your work definitely does that.
Oh, cool. Okay. Constructionist. Yeah, definitely. Good points.
I think that's why people find it so funny too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a thing I never thought about because I do it a million times a day.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I'm getting at is like we have these encounters with technology, but we don't really think about what the technology is doing to us as a society and as a larger picture and what we could actually do to change it.
Yeah, so I love what you're showing, and I know you present to like large audiences, but as an educator, I wonder, like, are you getting the kids? Because it's kind of like so little hope for our generation changing a thing. Like,
how younger kids are using technology?
I
have younger kids, and I mean, I have a teenager, and he's completely dialed into gaming, but doesn't want to do gaming. So it's interesting. It's like how do you think about what their interests could be without just introducing them to as many things as possible. I mean, I also do a robotics workshop as well with like drawing robots, and that gets kids involved really well.
Sure, but I mean, like this is like
this stuff,
pokey and it's like asking them to be critical about the stuff in which they were born into. Right?
That's true. Yeah, it's hard to do that.
But I think it's in the language, like everything is very like, it's easy to read what you're doing. It's not, sometimes people make these really cool, critical, and some people here do this, but like they're really like Snapchat friendly. You know what I mean?
You get it immediately.
It's easy to understand what's going on, which I think is part of why it would be appealing.
Yeah, any artist that has to like explain fully like what their concept is before you actually get it is hard. I'm very interested in projects that are just so simple and they just like make sense right away, like that. It's hard to find those projects. There's a few. I have a list of a few that I really like that. Definitely try to mimic them, but getting it right is like getting hit by lightning. It's really hard to get exactly right.
What are those projects?
There's a guy in Baltimore, Blake Conroy, who made a machine full of pennies, and if you crank it for an hour, it spits out minimum wage. Right? It's perfect.
Perfect.
And like so simple and just like, I mean, things like that are just like, just so good. And there's another one.
Should we wrap up? It's about
we can
1:35.
do I have another intro for the workshop if you want to do that, but I think I have a break, right?
Yeah, you want to do that here or over there?
We can do it here, sure. Because I have a demo here.
Okay, so we'll do that in
25
minutes?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, this is a great workshop. You get your hands dirty, you get to build things really quickly, and get some good output. All right, cool. Stick around. We'll be right back. SNL, right? Stick around.